Redditors who have gone or were declared missing, what is your story? I left the abusive household I grew up in, leaving a note clearly stating my intentions to never return. An hour or two later, I received a call from the police stating that I'd been declared missing. I explained to them my circumstances and they wished me well. Since I was of age, I was free. It'll be 3 years soon. I had almost the exact same experience when I was 16. A policeman came to see me to check I was okay, sat with me on a bench in a park, and asked me what my plans were. I told him I had money saved up, a stable full-time job, and a place to stay. We chatted for about 10 minutes, and then he wished me good luck and told me they wouldn't bother me again. I'm still very grateful to him for taking the time to talk to me and check I had everything I needed. Glad you're doing well now. I was 8 and on vacation. Decided to go for a walk without telling anyone. Played all afternoon at the beach. Came at night. Oh boy, was everyone mad. I had a mental breakdown in 2015 after losing a job. After having a hard year, so I packed a bag, got on my motorbike and rode to a party spot, Gold Coast. I got out enough cash to hold me over for a week and turned off my mobile before I left town. I spent a whole week just hitting the beach, partying, hitting bars and clubs. I stayed at a backpacker hostel and hung out with random backpackers. Overall, it was an amazing and refreshing week. I left to ride back home, and just before the Great Dividing Range, I got pulled over by the cops. Turns out, the 2 coworkers I saw after I got fired were worried, so they came by my house, just to check up on me. My housemates then didn't see me for a few days, after being told that I'd been fired, so they searched town and reported me to the cops as missing. I had a known history of depression and suicidal tendencies. The cops searched through my records, no mobile phone activity, no social media activity, no contact with family members. So it turns out that while I was off trying to just escape my shitty life for a week, everyone thought I'd killed myself or something. My license plate number was flagged, so when I went past the highway patrol, it must have come up on their computer to pull me over. The cop was actually quite nice. He mainly just wanted to know I was okay. He called in and had me removed as a missing person. In Australia, once you're listed as a missing person, you have to be cited and verified by a police officer to be removed. I got home 8 hours later to a lot of worried people. I honestly thought no one gave a fuck about me. If I knew it was going to cause so much trouble, I would have at least left a note. Man, that's great that you had so many people worried about you, and I think that's a great sign to always keep your head up, even when life's got you down. You have people who love you and will be there for you, even if you don't know it. The story of how I went missing is also one of my first memories. When I was 5, I went on holiday with my family to Scotland. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but land, dominated by trees. There wasn't much to do, so my sister and I played hide and seek. I thought it would be a great idea to hide right next to the front door of the cottage we were staying in, inside of a giant bush. I watched my sister look for me for about 5 minutes until she clearly gave up and went inside. However, I never gave up on anything and decided to stay until I was found. After a short period, 15 minutes or so, more people started playing the game. I now watched my parents sprint around in front of me, while I silently giggled in the bush thinking, I'm so good at this game. More and more people started to play, other holiday goers in cottages nearby, park rangers and police. I stayed in that bush for hours and hours until it got dark, having the time of my life. My sister was only 7, so she didn't help look for me and just sat by the doorstep. As it got darker outside, my yellow jacket got brighter, and after a whole day of searching for me in the nearby woods, my sister realized I was standing right next to her. Best game of hide and seek ever. I forget how old I was, but I was probably around 10. My friend and I started raking leaves for cash around our suburban neighborhood. We kept going from house to house asking anyone who had a tree in their yard if they wanted them raked for $5. We eventually went to so many houses we got ourselves lost within the crisscross streets of the neighborhood, since we really never left our block of houses beforehand. Then the sun set, and we found ourselves lost trying to recognize street names or anything familiar in the dark with only streetlights lighting the way. Eventually, as we're wandering lost, we heard cop sirens and lights blare and pull over and ask for our names. We got picked up and taken back to our houses. It felt like a long drive to us 10-year-olds, but in reality, it was like 4 blocks LOL. Boy, did we get the biggest scolding ever, and our parents took our hard-earned money. I ran away from home due to my alcoholic stepmom. My dad would always file a missing person report, and cops would eventually find me and bring me home. At 15, I was homeless for 6 months and selling acid for food and a place to stay. Was still better than dealing with my stepmom. She drank herself to death, and I found peace. Mine was weird because I was also a teen runaway, but was actually with my parents. In a nutshell, Ran away from home when I was 14. Lived on the streets with friends or in shelters for 2 years. My parents moved away from that city, so I was left behind. Long story there, but they tried their best for me, but had to let go. The last known address was with a boyfriend who was arrested along with his best friend who was dating my best friend. The landlady obviously evicted them both, which led to me having nowhere to go and running out of options in the middle of winter. It was a middle of the night blurry event that resulted in me having nowhere to go. My best friend was able to go to her family somehow or somewhere. We got separated that night and vowed to find each other and regroup and figure it out after some sleep. At this point, after 2 years, just before my 16th B-Day, I called my parents, who drove several hours and picked me up at a McDonald's at 5 a.m. and brought me back to their new city. I was determined to start over and get on a good path, with the lone support of my parents, and leave the old life completely behind. The only person I told was my best friend at the time, and I remember we were both crying. She wasn't sure about her family and asked me that once I got settled, maybe she could come to my family as well, for a new start. She went missing right after that, which I didn't know right away. I had one phone call from her where she told me things weren't good and she was trying to get money for a Greyhound ticket to come to my new city. My boyfriend and her boyfriend were both in jail at the time. Since the 4 of us were known to be together when she went missing, the police's first priority was to find me, but no one knew where I was, so the police themselves marked me also as missing along with her. My parents had a different last name than me, and I was a minor, so there wasn't a whole lot of information on me. Basically, they knew I was an underage street kid who couldn't be accounted for, whose best friend was also missing. Maybe 2 months later, I was settled into my new life. My parents registered me in school, bought me new belongings. I had lost everything when the landlady kicked my boyfriend out. I got a part-time job, and they also got me a therapist through some sort of free social services that got my name into the system. The police have also pieced that her last call was to a number in the same city where I was now registered in social services. While at school one day, the police showed up and brought me into the guidance counselor's office and asked me a hell of a lot of questions that I don't remember now. But I do remember them telling me I was a missing person, and then grilling me about knowing where the other girl was, who I didn't even know went missing, and that I had to know something. But it was just a really bizarre coincidence that I had burned out on street life at the same time she went missing. The most tragic part of this story is that she had died. Her body was found later that spring after the snow melted, which I saw on the news. They said she froze to death. No foul play. I had nightmares for so long about this, that she was knocking on my bedroom window, pleading to come in from the cold. That was all the late 80s. News back then wasn't as dramatic as it is now, and even her death was a small clip in a newspaper, with no headlines or anything like that. There was no Amber Alert back then, ESP not for street people with criminal boyfriends. The only reason the police were after us was because her mother reported her as missing. A lot of it is a blur to me now. But in 2007, when FB started getting mainstream, I got several messages from people I knew back then, saying they thought I was dead, and was it really me? It was really bizarre. Old friends from that city had said that we both went missing. My friend's body was found, and they never knew what became of me. Not me, but my hubby, and this was years ago. Hubby was about 8 or 9 years old when he and a group of boys were approached by some middle-aged Italians to sell candy. The kids were loaded into a van and taken to neighboring towns to hawk this candy. At some point, the kids started asking when they were going home, as the van was going further than they were expecting. A few kids started crying, then out came a gun, and they were told, "You're not going home." More tears, and then the van stopped, I believe for a bathroom stop, but it was near an open field. A few of the kids decided to make a mad dash through this field, being chased by the men, and made it to a grocery store. The authorities were alerted and their parents came to collect the children. They were about an hour away from home when found. Hubby is 55 now and hyper-vigilant about the grandkids and stranger danger. I took my 3 children and did a flit to get away from their father, who had attempted to kill me in front of them. I drove around 150 miles away. We were given a room in a woman's refuge in a coastal town. While the processing papers went through, the children asked to go to the beach. Even though it was November and cold, they were happily making sandcastles when I noticed a photographer. He kept directing the camera towards us, but casually tracked away when I looked up. I was worried that the photos could give away our location, so went to speak to him, but I couldn't catch up, so left it. I found out later that I had been reported as missing and a danger to the children by their father. We did not stay in the refuge long, as I never felt completely safe there after that. Are you okay now? I am okay. I live 150 miles away from where I consider home. Can't afford to return and won't until my now ex is dead.